Welcome to American History Lesson 2. Developing the Colonies. Our lesson objectives are: examine the causes, course, and consequences of British settlement in the American colonies, compare the relationships among the British, French, Spanish, and Dutch in their struggle for colonization of North America, compare the characteristics of the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies, identify the impact of key colonial figures on the economic, political, and social development of the colonies, discuss the impact of the colonial settlement on Native American populations. The Spanish Empire in the Americas. After Columbus's exploration, other Spanish explorers known as conquistadors, or the conquerors, traveled to the New World. These explorers made fortunes, but in doing so, they destroyed many of the Native American societies. Even so, this enabled Spain to become the most powerful country in the world during this era. In 1521, Hernan Cortes conquered the Aztecs by using his Native American allies and more advanced weapons. It helped that the Aztecs were weakened by diseases brought in by the Europeans. To show their strength, the Spaniards burned the Aztec capital and replaced it with a new Spanish-style city. This city became the capital of the colony of New Spain. Often, Spaniards married the Native American women, which resulted in a large mestizo or mixed Spanish and Native American population. The conquistadors received large estates called encomiendas as payments for their success. Native Americans were forced to farm, ranch, or mine these lands and were often treated badly. Spanish priests protested the system, and in 1542, when the Spanish crown ended the system of using Native Americans for slave labor, Spanish landowners then began importing Africans to use as slave labor. The Spanish Empire grew larger as conquistadors expanded from Mexico. The empire now included the Caribbean islands, Central America, and much of South America. Gold and silver mined from the New World Empire made Spain a wealthy nation. The Spanish moved into what is now the present-day United States. In 1565, Pedro Menendez de Aviles established a settlement at St. Augustine, or St. Augustine, which is the oldest European founded city in the present United States that exists today. Other explorers traveled westward to the southwest and southern plains. Although they did not find any gold, missionaries followed their path because their mission was to convert the Native Americans to Catholicism. It was during the winter of 1609 to 1610 that Pedro de Peralta established a settlement named Santa Fe. Encouraged and led by the Pope, Native Americans resisted the increasing Spanish presence. During the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, the Native Americans killed many priests and burned churches to force the Spaniards back to New Spain. A decade later, the Spanish returned to regain control of the area. Jamestown. Visit this link to read the Mayflower Compact. It was not until 1607 that the Virginia Company, a group of investors, sent 150 colonists aboard 3 ships to North America. When they arrived, they built a settlement in Virginia they named Jamestown in honor of King James I. Because the settlers spent much time searching for gold and not growing food, many died during the harsh winter. The colony was all but abandoned. However, new settlers learned to grow tobacco, which was a Native American crop in great demand in Europe. Tobacco crops made the Virginia farmers very wealthy. Indentured servants were first used to work the farms. Indentured servants would promise to work on a landowner's farm from 4 to 7 years in return for their passage to America, at which time the servant would be freed. Most of the indentured servant population was made up of the English poor, but some were Africans. There were few indentured servants by the late 1600s, and the planters, or farmers, primarily used slave labor from Africa. When the English began to take more land, the Native Americans began to resist and fought back. In 1624, James I sent English soldiers to suppress the unrest among the Native Americans. By 1644, there were almost 10,000 English settlers living in Virginia colony. This colonized English society was split between the wealthy landowners who dominated the economic market and politics and the former indentured servants who did not have money to buy land. When these former indentured servants attempted to take land from the Native Americans, the fighting began. The former indentured servants asked for help from Virginia's governor, who himself was a wealthy landowner, but he refused. Nathaniel Bacon encouraged the poor settlers to rebel, which they did, but the governor easily ended that revolt. One thing was evident, though, and that was that the tension between the wealthy landowners and the poor settlers. Puritans. In the North, the Puritans established another settlement. The Puritans were a religious group who felt that the Church of England held beliefs that were too closely related to the Roman Catholic Church. Their hope was to reform the Church of England to be more closely aligned with their beliefs. One of these groups, the Pilgrims, established a colony at Plymouth in 1620. John Winthrop wanted to create a moral society that he called a city upon a hill, hoping all people would admire it. These men who owned land could vote in this colony, which was a high number for this area. Church leaders were not allowed to hold elective office, but were very influential in the colony. The Puritan church leaders allowed no dissension for the church views. One novel view came from a minister named Roger Williams, who asserted that the settlers should buy, not take, any land from the Native Americans. Williams believed that government officials should not punish anyone who held differing religious beliefs. He faced arrest for these ideas, so in 1636 he fled to Narragansett Bay and established the Providence colony. He was joined by Anne Hutchinson, who was forced by church leaders to leave Massachusetts Bay because she questioned their authoritative views. As these settlements spread, there were Native Americans who resisted. The Pequot tribe was wiped out in 1637, and this led to peace for a time, but then in 1675, war broke out again. Metacomb, who the settlers called King Philip, began to attack settlements throughout New England. Many lives were lost by both settlers and Native Americans, including Metacomb himself in 1676. With his death, most of the Native American power in the southeast New England decreased. Middle colonies. Dutch settlers established what are now the cities of Albany and New York City. Dutch settlers controlled a Swedish settlement that was present on the Delaware River. The Dutch had good relations with Native Americans, though because they were mainly interested in growing trading markets. The diversity of the Dutch colony of New Netherland was unusual for this time. The population included people from several different European nations, including Jews and Africans. In fact, during the 1660s, about 1/5 or 20% of the population was of African descent. New Netherland divided the English northern and southern colonies. The English wanted to unite the northern and southern colonies, so they took control of the New Netherland colony. James, Duke of York, then renamed the colony New York. Then he separated off the southern part of New York and named it New Jersey. There are conflicting accounts in the history archives on this event. Another English colony was established west of the Delaware River. William Penn was granted a stretch of land west by King Charles II as repayment on a debt. Penn was a Quaker, which is a religious group that was often persecuted for their religious views. Penn wanted to establish a home for Quakers by creating this colony he named Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania means Penn's Woods. This colony allowed freedom of worship and included an elected government. Penn created a plan for the capital city of Philadelphia. Because Penn believed that settlers had to buy land from the Native Americans and treat them fairly, he created a court comprised of both settlers and Native American judges to resolve any disputes. Penn advertised to attract settlers to his new colony, and as a result, thousands of Germans came to Pennsylvania to call it home. Penn lived only a few years in his new colony, but because it was established on sound principles of equality, Pennsylvania continued to grow. A gorget is an ornamental plate that adorns the net. Gorgets and printed testimonials were among the items given to Indian allies. From the Smithsonian collection. What next? Take your time to go back and review the lesson on your own. After your review, complete the lesson review for the lesson and submit for grading. Remember, your submission should follow all the rules for standard written English. All submissions must be written in your own words and sources used cited at the end. How to cite sources in APA format. When you reference a source within an APA-style paper, whether it is using a direct quote, repurposing an image, or simply referring to an idea or theory, you should insert an in-text citation, the author's surname, and the date of publication within parentheses, straight after a direct quote. CitationMachine.net will assist you in creating citations.